Drew Carey was born with 6 toes on his right foot. By age 9, he had lost his father and survived something he wouldn't talk about for decades. At 18, he tried to take his own life at a fraternity party. At 23, he tried again while working at a Denny's. He was broke, expelled from college twice, and sleeping on his brother's couch. Now he's worth $165 million. He owns 5 yachts, 14 properties, and a $34 million mansion with a private bowling alley. But when you hear what he said about dying on stage, you'll understand why he calls himself the luckiest man alive. Drew Allison Carey entered the world on May 23, 1958 in Cleveland, Ohio, and the moment he arrived, he was already the baby of the family. His brothers Neil, born in 1946, and Roger, born in 1952, towered over him in age, which meant childhood for Drew often felt quiet and a little lonely as the older boys drifted into their own teenage lives. Their parents, Louis and Beulah, tried to hold the family together on a working-class income from General Motors, and the small house in Cleveland's old Brooklyn neighborhood carried the sound of factory shifts, bills stacking on the table, and kids growing up faster than they should. Drew carried one secret into the world that he would joke about decades later. He had been born with 6 toes on his right foot. It didn't change anything about how he ran around that neighborhood, but it added one more detail to a childhood already shaped by feeling a step behind everyone else, watching his brothers move ahead while he tried to figure out his place in the quiet spaces they left behind. Everything changed in 1966, when Drew was only 8. His father, Louis, grew suddenly ill, and the sadness that filled the house never left. Sources have disagreed for years on whether it was a brain tumor or a heart attack, but most point toward the tumor that slowly pulled him away from the family. Drew barely had memories of his father that weren't connected to sickness, and the loss crushed him in a way that would echo through his life for decades. His brothers were 20 and 14 by then, old enough to understand, but still powerless to stop anything. Their mother, Beulah, was thrown into survival mode, juggling multiple jobs and arriving home exhausted, trying to stretch every dollar. Drew was too young to process any of it, yet old enough to feel the weight settle on his shoulders. Later in his memoir, he admitted that he had almost no happy memories of his dad at all, only moments wrapped in fear and confusion. That early heartbreak pushed him toward a long struggle with depression, a struggle that would return again and again, long after the world knew his name. After that loss, Drew didn't just grow quiet, he withdrew into himself. He felt something breaking inside him, and in a moment that said more about his pain than anything else, he asked his mother for psychiatric help. He knew he needed someone to talk to, but Beulah was stretched thin and could not afford it. The house was already weighed down with work, grief, and bills. Then, at 9 years old, something even darker happened. Drew revealed many years later that he had been sexually abused by a male relative, and the experience dug even deeper into the wounds already forming inside him. He didn't tell anyone at the time, so the pain had nowhere to go except inward. After school, he stayed indoors, watching cartoons and memorizing joke books and comedy albums. He studied laughter as if he were trying to build a world he could hide in. Comedy became a doorway, and he kept stepping through it because the other side felt safer than real life ever did. Even with all that weight on him, Drew found one small place where he could breathe. At James Ford Rhodes High School, he picked up the cornet and trumpet and joined the marching band. Rehearsals gave him structure. Performances gave him noise to drown out the silence at home. He held on tightly to that routine, and in 1976 he graduated, carrying his sadness with him into adulthood. He tried to push forward and enrolled at Kent State University, hoping that maybe college would give him a fresh start. Instead, he found himself slipping again. He joined Delta Tau Delta, thinking fraternity life might help him break out of his shell, but depression whispered louder than anything else. He was expelled once for poor grades, tried again, and got expelled a second time. It was rare for a student to be expelled twice, but Drew simply couldn't focus. He drifted through 5 years of classes without earning a degree. sitting in lecture halls and feeling like he didn't belong. He later said he felt like a nerdy loner who had no idea how to find happiness or success. The spiral tightened when he was 18 at a fraternity party. Music was loud, people were laughing, and Drew felt like he was watching the world from behind glass. Something inside him snapped. He walked downstairs and wondered why everyone was so happy while he felt so broken. That night he attempted suicide for the first time, calling it years later a cry for help. He didn't want to die as much as he wanted the pain to stop. His second attempt came when he was 23, working at a Denny's in Las Vegas and sinking even deeper into sadness. After that second attempt, his brother Roger stepped in. He bought Drew a plane ticket home because he didn't know what else to do. Back in Cleveland, Drew started reading self-help books obsessively, searching for any idea that might pull him away from the edge. Slowly, he began to understand that he wanted to live, but he needed something to force him into structure before he fell apart again. By the time Drew arrived at Kent State years earlier, he already felt lost. Being expelled twice didn't just bruise his confidence, it crushed it completely. College had been his chance to start over, but instead it became another chapter he wished he could erase. His fraternity brothers moved on, studying, graduating, beginning real lives, while Drew felt stuck in the same dark corner. After his third year, he finally walked away from Kent State for good, with no degree and no direction. He was broke, depressed, and sleeping on his brother's couch, trying to figure out why nothing ever seemed to change. This wasn't a short, rough patch. It was years of hitting dead ends, and his self-worth loosened until he barely recognized himself. Each day felt heavy, and each night felt like the same long stretch of thoughts he couldn't escape. The second suicide attempt in his early 20s wasn't a sudden impulse. It was the result of everything building inside him since childhood. Even decades later, he could still remember the feeling from that first attempt when he was 18, walking through a house full of people who were laughing and drinking, and asking himself why he couldn't feel what they felt. In his 2024 interview with Chris Wallace, he described it in clear detail. He said he was just angry that everyone was so happy and wondered who would miss him if he disappeared. Both attempts involved swallowing sleeping pills. Both moments were rooted in a lifetime of pain he didn't know how to express. Even after fame, while hosting The Price is Right, traces of those thoughts still flickered through his mind at times. He admitted he sometimes imagined being cremated quietly with no funeral because he didn't see the point. These were not small thoughts. They were the remnants of someone who had struggled for survival far before anyone knew his name. By 1980, Drew was 22 and standing at the edge of another empty chapter. He had no degree, no job skills, and no confidence left. His brother Roger let him sleep on his couch, but couldn't carry him forever. Drew had tried stand-up comedy around the country and came home defeated, embarrassed, and broke. With nowhere left to turn, he walked into a Marine Corps recruiting station, not out of patriotism, but out of desperation. He needed direction, food, and the promise of a bed. Enlisting in the United States Marine Corps Reserve became his way to pull himself out of the spiral. He later admitted he simply ran out of options. Joining the Marines wasn't about becoming a hero, it was about staying alive. From 1980 to 1986, the Marines reshaped Drew in ways no one expected. He served as a field radio operator in the 25th Marine Regiment, handling communication lines that connected units in tough field conditions. It was demanding and technical work, and he poured himself into it because for the first time in years, he knew what he was supposed to do each day. He trained hard, pushed himself, and shocked everyone by earning a perfect 300 on the Marine Corps Physical Fitness Test. That meant 20 pull-ups, 100 crunches, and a 3-mile run in 18 minutes. He kept going until he reached the rank of sergeant. Long after he left the Marines, he still credited those years with giving him discipline and work ethic, the two things his life had been missing. Those 6 years didn't just steady his mind, they changed his appearance too. The crew cut and the horn-rimmed glasses he adopted during training stayed with him, turning into the signature look the world would later recognize. He never planned it that way. It was simply practical in the Marines and eventually became part of his brand. The routine, the meals, and the structure saved him. He said the Marines gave him 3 meals a day and a place to sleep, which beat being broke and sleeping on a couch. Those simple comforts rebuilt him slowly. What started as his last resort became the foundation for everything that happened next. By 1983, Drew was still in the Marine Corps Reserve, but searching for a path forward. So he moved to Las Vegas, hoping something would stick. Instead, he found himself bouncing between jobs. He worked as a bank teller, counting money for people who had more stability than he could imagine, and then waited tables at Denny's, serving tourists who came for fun while he struggled to make rent. He was 25 and drifting again, the Vegas lights shining brighter than anything happening in his own life. The depression he carried from his early years didn't disappear just because he moved. He still felt lost and had already attempted suicide twice. Every day felt like an uphill climb. In 1985, when he was 27, he decided to take the one risk that felt honest. A radio DJ named David Lawrence had been paying Drew to write jokes for his show, and he suggested Drew try performing stand-up himself. Drew took that suggestion seriously. He walked into the public library, checked out books on how to write jokes, and made a resolution for 1986 to finally step onto a stage. By April, he landed his first paid job as an MC at the Cleveland Comedy Club. But even as he chased laughs, he waited tables and read self-help books constantly because he still lived with depression. Comedy wasn't just a job. It was a rope he held onto so he wouldn't fall back into the darkness. He spent the next 6 years grinding through clubs across the country. From 1985 to 1991, he traveled, performed, and kept rewriting his material. His humor grew from his struggles, from his weight, from his glasses, from the everyday frustrations that turned into punchlines. He even appeared on Star Search in 1988, and while it brought attention, it didn't bring stability. He was the comedian comedians admired, but the wider world didn't know him yet. Money was tight. Opportunities slipped through his fingers. Depression followed him from city to city. Still, he kept reading, kept writing, and kept going. Then, November 8, 1991 arrived, a night that would change everything. Drew walked onto the stage of The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson, knowing this was the biggest moment of his career. He delivered every line with a mix of honesty and timing that made the audience erupt. But the moment that mattered most came when Carson laughed and then motioned for Drew to join him on the couch. That invitation was more than an honor. It was a signal to the entire industry that Drew Carey mattered. That short appearance lifted him out of obscurity. His career took off so fast, it felt unreal. The doors that once stayed closed opened wide. He landed an HBO special within months. Disney offered him a development deal. His Showtime special in 1993 won a Cable Ace Award. In 1994, he appeared in The Good Life, and even though the show didn't last, he stood out immediately. Then on September 13, 1995, The Drew Carey Show premiered on ABC. He earned $60,000 an episode at first, then $300,000, and by the final season, $750,000. By 1998, he appeared on the Forbes list with $45,500,000 in income from his show, And Whose Line Is It, Anyway? The man who once worked at Denny's and wanted to disappear was now worth more than $100,000. All of it traced back to those 7 minutes on Carson's stage and the invitation that told America he belonged there. His show launched on September 13, 1995, and carried pieces of Cleveland in every corner. It drew 100,000 viewers on its first night, landing at 9:30 p.m. and giving ABC a strong Wednesday slot. Even though it finished the season ranked 48th, people connected with the ordinary guy working at Winfred Louder, imagining who he could have been if comedy had never found him. Each episode cost about $3,000 to produce, but the investment paid off as the world slowly fell in love with the show. Then came the historic moment when one of its episodes became the first TV episode ever simulcast on the internet. Technology was barely ready for something like that in the mid-1990s, but the show tried anyway. People still used dial-up, streaming barely existed, and yet Drew's team was already thinking ahead. It didn't change television overnight, but it pointed toward a future where shows would live online as easily as they did on air. In its own quiet way, the show helped open the door for everything that came later on platforms like Netflix and Hulu. As ratings grew, the show held a top 30 position for 4 straight seasons. Season 2 jumped to number 18, with an average of 500,000 viewers. Season 3 climbed to number 16. Season 4 reached number 14. Even though viewership numbers shifted slightly, the momentum carried the show higher each year. Strong ABC lead-ins and a move to a 9 p.m. slot helped push the audience upward. Fans felt like the show understood real life, and that connection kept them watching. One episode changed everything even more. On May 14, 1997, the Season 2 finale featured an elaborate musical dance sequence called New York and Queens. When ABC executives saw it, they realized the show could take creative risks no one expected. Drew later said that moment created a surge of trust from the network. Ratings climbed, creative freedom expanded, and the show earned Emmy nominations for art direction, choreography, and costumes. The musical numbers became a signature, giving the show a kind of joy no one could predict. Looking back, Drew admitted something important. He said he was a terrible auditioner. So bad, in fact, that he had to write his own show because no casting director would give him a chance. He laughed about it, but it was true. He built his success from scratch because traditional doors didn't open for him. That fear of losing everything never went away. He carried his stand-up mentality into television, showing up every week ready to work hard because he always believed he could be fired at any moment. That mindset kept him sharp and reminded him of what it took to get there. Drew Carey stepped into American homes on August 5, 1998, when he launched the new version of Whose Line Is It Anyway on ABC, and almost overnight, he pulled improvisational comedy out of small clubs and placed it in prime time. The premiere drew 7.4 million viewers with a 7.6 rating, and by the third episode, the audience climbed to 7.9 million as more people realized something fresh was happening. Drew stood at the center of this strange, joyful chaos and kept telling viewers that everything was made up and the points didn't matter, which somehow made the games feel even more exciting. People loved how he hosted with a relaxed, self-teasing style that made improv feel easy to understand, even if the comedians on stage were performing at lightning speed. Ryan Stiles, Colin Mockery, Wayne Brady, and the rotating guests kept building scenes without scripts, and Drew kept the energy moving from one moment to the next. What started as a simple summer test quickly became a beloved part of late-night television, pulling improv into the mainstream and giving ABC a surprise hit. Drew also refused to stay behind the desk. Every time he picked a winner, he gave up his own seat and let the winner call out the final game. which meant he had to jump into the madness himself. It became a tradition that fans waited for, because watching Drew's mix of fear and excitement whenever Wayne suggested a singing game or whenever Ryan wanted something physical added a whole different charge to each episode. He would walk onto the stage with this wide-eyed look, as if he had forgotten he wasn't a trained improviser, and then try his best to survive whatever the others threw at him. He looked human in those moments, and the audience loved him for it. Because if he could jump in and look a little lost, yet still have fun, then everyone watching felt invited in too. While Whose Line rose higher, the Drew Carey Show kept building his career to another level, and by June 2001, he reached a deal that placed him among the highest-paid comedians in the world. He went from earning $300,000 per episode to a staggering $750,000 per episode as part of a $152 million agreement between ABC and Warner Brothers. The deal covered seasons 8 and 9 and pushed his total compensation close to $60 million when producer fees were included. It was surreal to imagine that one person could earn almost a quarter of a $3 million episode budget, yet Drew had become such a reliable star that ABC felt he was worth every dollar. He was standing next to giants like Jerry Seinfeld and Tim Allen, and he had reached that place through pure consistency and an unusual ability to make people feel comfortable. By the time Whose Line finished airing its ABC run from August 5, 1998 to September 4, 2004, Drew had hosted around 220 episodes across 8 seasons. And even though that was only 6 years on paper, the reruns on ABC Family between 2005 and 2007 stretched the show's influence far beyond its official timeline. Ratings were strong, some episodes climbing to 9.8 points, which proved that American audiences were willing to embrace comedy built on spontaneity. The show made improvisation feel alive and risky and real, and it helped launch Wayne Brady into national superstardom while deepening the legacy of Ryan and Colin. Even years after Drew left to take over The Price is Right in 2007, the show found new life on the CW in 2013, showing how powerful the concept still was. Around that time, Drew tried something bold with Drew Carey's Green Screen Show in 2004. He mixed live improv with post-production animation, hoping the animated backgrounds would add a new spark. But the magic of improv came from the immediacy of the moment, and the delay created by animation took something away. The show premiered on October 7, 2004, on the WB, pulling only 2.7 million viewers a week, and after 5 episodes, the network pulled it from the schedule. They eventually burned off the remaining 7 episodes, bringing the total to 12 plus the pilot, but the experiment faded. Drew learned the hard truth that improv works because it is raw and unfiltered, and nothing artificial can replace that lightning in a bottle. So when he walked onto the Price is Right stage in October 2007, stepping into the place Bob Barker had held for 35 years, he knew he needed to be himself. Barker retired in June 2007 at age 83, and Drew, who was 49 at the time, had just said no to the job because he didn't want to be tied down again. He liked freedom. He liked chasing new passions, including the dream of owning a soccer team. But one conversation changed everything when a producer asked what his favorite thing to do was. Drew said he loved leaving big tips at restaurants, and the producer told him that hosting The Price is Right was like leaving big tips for a living, since he would spend every day giving prizes to happy people. Something clicked. Suddenly, the job didn't feel like a cage. It felt like a way to spread joy on a scale he had never experienced. Before Drew stepped into the role fully, Bob Barker took him to lunch and gave him one piece of guidance that shaped everything that came after. Barker told him to never try to copy him and to make the show his own. Drew took that advice to heart. He changed the opening line so that it no longer called the host the star of the show. Drew believed the contestants were the true stars, and he wanted the audience to feel that too. He studied how Barker talked to people, noticing how calm he always looked, how he never seemed stressed, and how he made contestants relax by being relaxed himself. Drew practiced letting go of tight control and learned how to stay loose on stage, something he still credits for his long run. In 2012, Drew arranged something that stunned fans everywhere. Bob Barker returned to the studio at age 90, and for the first time ever, he stepped into the announcer's booth and called out a contestant's name instead of hosting. He leaned into the microphone and said Evelyn's name, telling her to come on down, and it sent shockwaves across the internet. People had watched him command the stage for 35 years, but they had never heard him do the iconic call from the booth. It was a gift to fans and a moment that linked both eras of the show in a way that felt almost historic. By 2025, Drew's salary had soared to about $12.5 million per year, putting him among the 20 highest-paid hosts in the world. He earned roughly $50,000 per episode and built a net worth close to $165 million. Some reports even pushing it to $180 million. He had come a long way from the early days of earning $60,000 per episode on The Drew Carey Show, climbing to $300,000 and later $1 million per episode before landing in this new chapter where his financial success matched his long-standing connection with viewers. Despite all the success, Drew surprised everyone by saying he never wanted to retire. In 2024, he admitted that he wanted to die on stage with a microphone in his hand because he loved the work so deeply. He believed Bob Barker made a mistake by retiring, and at age 65, he felt supported and loved by his cast and crew. He didn't want to walk away from something that still felt meaningful. He insisted that as long as his heart kept beating and CBS wanted him, he would stay exactly where he was. His personal life moved through its own storms during these years. In October 2007, he proposed to chef Nicole Gerax after they had been dating since 2006. She had just finished culinary school, and Drew felt something real forming between them. Nicole had a young son named Connor, and Drew stepped into the role of father figure without hesitation. Connor called him Dad, and that bond changed Drew's life. He realized he couldn't keep up with the energetic boy, and after one moment of breathlessness and frustration, he understood the danger he was in. He weighed more than 300 pounds, had type 2 diabetes, and felt trapped in a body that couldn't support the life he wanted. That fear sparked a transformation that would change everything. In 2010, he committed to losing weight with a discipline that shocked everyone around him. He cut out every carb from his diet, drank a gallon of water a day, quit alcohol entirely, and pushed himself through 45 minutes of cardio 5 or 6 days a week. He lost 80 to 100 pounds in 7 months, dropping almost 12 pounds a month and shrinking his waist from 44 inches to around 34. Even more miraculous, he reversed his type 2 diabetes and stopped needing medication, something doctors called extraordinary. People assumed he had surgery or used weight loss drugs, but Drew repeated the same answer again and again. No shortcuts, just work, just commitment, just a moment of clarity that saved his life. The engagement with Nicole ended in January 2012 after nearly 5 years, but Drew kept his promise to stay in Connor's life. He took photos with him on vacations, spent time with him often, and kept loving him as if nothing had changed. Their bond stayed strong even when the adults moved in different directions. In 2017, Drew met therapist Amy Harwick at a Hollywood party. She was bartending that night, and something immediate happened between them. Their first date was at Disneyland, and within weeks Drew was telling co-workers that he might marry her. They moved fast in a way that felt bright and certain, and by January 2018 they were engaged. He introduced her to millions on The Price is Right during a Valentine's Day episode, smiling wider than anyone had ever seen him. Even though the engagement ended later that same year, Drew never stopped loving her. He once said their love was something people were lucky to feel, even once in a lifetime. Then the unthinkable happened on February 15, 2020. Amy was murdered by her ex-boyfriend Gareth Pursehouse, who broke into her Hollywood Hills home, attacked her, strangled her, and threw her from her third-floor balcony. Drew learned later that just 2 days earlier she had texted him for the first time in years, asking to reconnect and talk about forgiveness. He replied immediately, telling her he would love to meet. A friend told Drew that Amy cried tears of joy when she read his message. They planned to talk after Valentine's Day, but that moment never came. Drew said it destroyed him. He lost her twice, once to a breakup and once to a tragedy he still thinks about every day. Police arrested Pursehouse within hours, charging him with murder and burglary with the special circumstance of lying in wait. Evidence showed he had broken in and waited for hours in the dark, even lying in her bed as he waited. The trial stretched across years until September 28, 2023, when a jury found him guilty. He was sentenced on December 6, 2023, to life in prison without parole. Drew said the closure helped him breathe again, but the scars ran deep. Even in 2025, he admitted he still didn't date. He had friendships, he had company, but nothing romantic. Amy's death changed his entire view of intimacy and love. Today, Drew continues building a fortune that reaches around $165 million. He holds about $55 million in cash, another $90 million in investments, and owns 11 luxury cars, 5 yachts, and more than 14 properties, including a $34 million mansion on Mulholland Drive that he bought for $13.5 million in 2019. The house is nearly 11,300 square feet, with an infinity pool and a private bowling alley, sitting above the city with views stretching all the way to downtown Los Angeles. He also holds a small property in Cleveland to keep his roots close. His investment in the Seattle Sounders became one of his smartest moves. He bought between 7.5% and 10% of the team in 2007. When the franchise was valued at $680 million in 2022, his stake soared to between $51 and $68 million. What made the investment special wasn't just the money. Drew helped create a democratic structure for the team after falling in love with the idea during a trip to FC Barcelona's Camp Nou. Fans of the Sounders now get to vote on major decisions through the Sounders FC Alliance, something that had never existed in American sports before. Through all of this, Drew still walks onto the Price is Right stage with the same warmth he carried on his first day. He is 66 now and approaching 67 on May 23, 2026, yet he shows no sign of stepping down. He speaks often about Amy and keeps her photos around his home, saying she is still with him in spirit. Hosting the show remains the joy of his life, and he believes he was made for this job. He intends to keep going as long as he can, holding on to the happiness it gives him and the connection he feels with the people around him. And somewhere deep inside him, in a quiet place shaped by loss and love and laughter, he carries the memory of the woman he once planned to meet the very next day.